Recovery Friendly Workplace is a BHDDH program. We're embedded in that department. It's been around a couple of years, and the primary mission of Recovery Friendly Workplace is to work with Rhode Island. I don't want to say businesses because not always private businesses, but Rhode Island workplaces to help them respond more impactfully to issues of employee mental health and substance abuse. And I'm even saying caregiving and trauma. I like to kind of broaden the horizons in terms of what employees are dealing with. But our mandate is more along the lines of mental health and substance use. What does it mean to respond more impactfully? That means that we help employers look at policies such as making sure the health benefits have parity with other conditions such as diabetes or whatever else comes up. So if an employee needs help with mental health or substance abuse, they get good insurance. Looking at how the supervisors and managers handle difficult conversations with employees that they're worried about. The whole range of things that we can do. So if you are not a recovery-friendly workplace and you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us and we'll come out and work with you. All our work and services are provided at no cost because we are funded through the state. So that's good news. In my journey of providing services to businesses, I come across fantastic people like we have today with Catherine Diorsi and Michelle. Am I pronouncing Alborg?
Alborg, yep.
Alborg today, who are our guests on this webinar. They are both certified health coaches from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which is a fantastic program. I was mentioning that to them earlier. As a mother and a sister who have witnessed and suffered the heartbreak of substance use disorder, they understand the pain and the need for urgency of addressing this topic very, very well. Due to decades of stress and burnout, both Catherine and Michelle have experienced significant health issues. We know the impact that constant flush of cortisol from stress into the body can do to you. We all know that. They've utilized their health training and coaching to heal themselves, body, mind, and spirit. And they've been able to recover and heal from these health conditions, continually to successfully manage the stress in their lives, which is great. We're going to learn about how they've been doing that. Hopefully we'll walk away with some good stuff today. As a result, they are dedicated and unwavering in creating a revolutionary, sustainable substance use and mental health recovery program that goes far beyond just treating symptoms. I know that's what the Institute of Health Integration and Nutrition is all about, not treating just symptoms, but getting to the root causes of things. So they're our guests today, and I'll let them introduce themselves if they want to go more, but then we can get right into the topic today, which is managing stress and burnout. So welcome, Michelle and Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So my name is Catherine Diorsi, and what Michelle and I are both kind of planning today is just to share a little bit each about our own journeys. And what we say is that we had to learn the hard way, that we can no longer just go about our lives and let stress take us over and try to take us out, because it definitely can do that if you allow it. So Michelle and I, through our journeys, we've learned a ton that we did not know. We're still learning every day. We're still practicing everything we're going to talk about. And we just continue to have an open mind about new different modalities and new different things that we could do. And so we also ask that of you as well. Without further ado, I'll kind of talk for the first half, and then I'll turn it over to Michelle, and we'll make sure that we have time for questions. So unfortunately or fortunately, I have a significant amount of experience, like Michelle, like many of you on this call, with stress and burnout. So, the interesting thing is I thought I was taking care of myself. So my background is in traditional healthcare. I've had my master's in physical therapy. So from that point of view, it was always about taking care of your physical body. I was always into health and physical fitness growing up in school as dancer and all that stuff. And my professional background, was in traditional pharmaceutical medicine. So I worked for the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years. Again, everything really seemed to look great on the outside. I thought I was fine. Everyone else thought I was fine. My personality and such is, I'm always trying to look at things as half full. But, my life really took a change in 2016. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my stomach just started to hurt. It's like a vague general pain. Next day it was still there, called the doctor. He said, oh, maybe it's a stomach bug, maybe it's a virus. Next day now I woke up in the morning, sharp shooting pain down my right hand side. Ended up laying on the bathroom floor just because I was about ready to pass out. And finally called the doctor back and said, I think it's my appendix. And he said, well, why don't you go to the emergency room? So, part of what we're going to talk about today is like life lessons too. Like, what have Michelle learned about through our journeys, and what are the tips that we can pass on to you? So right away, here I thought I was getting my appendix out, and I drove myself to the emergency room. My husband said, do you want me to, take you in? My husband was a clinic director of physical therapy, and I was more concerned about him treating his patients and not messing up his schedule than I was for my own health. So I wasn't even aware of it either. I thought nothing of this. So this was just how I was living my life for so long, always taking care of everybody else, always, saying I'm fine. It's fine. I got it. It's fine. I have a smile, right? Keep going, keep going. Not realizing something really had been brewing a couple years prior. And it was kind of showing itself with fatigue. I was exhausted all the time. I was so tired. I was continually getting sick. I was always having like sinus infection, another sinus infection. So those were little signals. And then some stomach issues. Again, I think so many of us, when we're managing or dealing with stress and burnout, it's like our body is trying to talk to us, but we either rationalize or we don't think we have time to deal with it or whatever it is. And we're just like, nah, it's good. It's fine. Keep going. So I drove myself to Rhode Island Hospital, and I thought I was getting my appendix out, and I was diagnosed with severe Crohn's disease. And I don't know about any of you on the phone if you know what Crohn's disease is, but essentially it's an intestinal disorder. And upon arrival at the hospital, there was so much inflammation in my intestines. Think of them squeezed like this. They couldn't even take a scope that they would use for an infant. They couldn't get that through my intestines. They were that knotted up and that twisted. So I had multiple ulcers, a fistula, an abscess, and they were contemplating surgery on the spot. But they also said I needed to be on these heavy duty medications right away. So for somebody that thought they took care of themselves, and somebody that also comes from the pharmaceutical industry, all of this really was like me being blindsided and me saying, like, how did this happen? Where did this come from? So this quite a long journey, but I ended up going on traditional medicine. It did not work. I was on the top gold standard medications. And at the end of the year, I really had my back against the wall because it didn't work. I know had side effects from the medications, and I was still sick. I wasted another year of my life still sick. So I ended up choosing to really think about this differently, because the traditional side wasn't working. I started to investigate holistic medicine. I started seeing a naturopath. So this is one takeaway for anyone who might be struggling with any issues. My naturopath is Dr. Kaz from Anasa Personalized Medicine in Providence. She's excellent. And I can tell you this was a type of care that I was never aware of. I didn't know about this practice of medicine, and they are licensed doctors who are also trained in natural medicine. So through this journey, the first 6 months, I knew that I was now on the right path. I discovered that for 30 years, I had chronic stress and I wasn't taking care of it. And my adrenal, I know Jeff mentioned your adrenal glands. So your adrenal glands produce cortisol. My cortisol, I did not have any. So cortisol is one of those hormones that we have in our body, is to help us manage the stress. But what happens when we're in this chronic stress mode over and over, and we're doing nothing to replenish it, we exhaust it. So it's supposed to be used for like the car accidents and, these major life-threatening emergencies. But when daily life is an emergency every single day, it's just pumping out that cortisol. So I had exhausted all the cortisol. I had tremendous amount of food allergies. I had a tremendous amount of imbalance in my gut health. But one of the biggest things that I learned was for 30 years, all of these situations and experiences and life stressors, I replayed them over and over in my mind. So what I did not realize is that every time I replayed them, I also replayed them emotionally. And this was really one of my biggest learnings and one of the things that I want to impart on all of you today. I did not realize that we have an emotional body and that we have a spiritual body. I mean, I went to church, but that was really like all that I did. And I wasn't really listening. I was just kind of checking a box. So I wasn't connected spiritually. And I really did not know anything about the emotional body and all of our energy systems that we have. We have what's called chakras in our body. We have meridians. And when I learned all of this and I thought about it, what I also realized is back in 6th grade, we all learned, down to the cellular level, our cells all contain energy. So it's either protons, neutrons, or electrons. Protons being positive, neutrons being neutral, electrons being negative. So our cells carry energy. Everything around us is energy. This is one of the greatest learnings that I have, and this is one of the greatest practices that I keep today. Because underneath, I was taking care of my bones, my muscles, right? But underneath, my cells were all filled with negative energy. Well, how? So the question is, how does it get there? It gets there from our thoughts, right? Replaying all those negative stories, all the grief and the pain and everything that I had suffered. My brother was addicted for 20 years to opioids and alcohol. And then he died to a fatal overdose 16 years ago. My father died from lung cancer. All of these things that have happened in our lives, which is part of daily life, but I wasn't processing them. I wasn't taking care of them and I wasn't working through it. I just kept saying I'm fine. So imagine this in your own self and in your own life story. What is the health of your cells? Are they filled with, really light, healing, love energy? Or are they filled with pain, trauma, stress, right? You know how that feels. It's heavy. And one way that we can know that this is real is, imagine you're in one of your rooms at your office and you have a group company meeting, right? And you're sitting in the room and somebody comes walking through the door and they're ticked off, they're stressed out. You feel that. You could be in a great side conversation and you feel it. Sometimes it even takes the wind out of you. That is them with negative energy inside their body. Now, the question I like to throw back to people to think about is, how do people feel when you walk into the room? Right? What's the energy when you come into that room? And, I would, had to learn the hard way, if you will, that I have to take control of my energy, not only for me and my own health, but the realization that it is impacting everyone around us, everyone in our home, all of the relationships that we love, our relationships at work. It matters. So definitely, number one, this energy piece is key. So how can you manage this? One, there's a lot of ways that you can do this at home, at work, for free. And then there's other things that you can do into the community. So the community piece, acupuncture, Reiki, sound healing classes. There's an amazing facility in West Warwick called Quantum Wellness that Michelle and I are huge advocates of. It is a room, you walk into a room and there's these lounge chairs and you just go in and you lay in the chairs, and in the corners of the room are these towers. They're kind of like TV screens and they're emitting, it's Tesla energy, they're emitting energy, and you just lay there. And what it's doing is it's going down to the innermost cells and it's penetrating that energy and it's breaking up all the toxins. And so then what you need to do, you can stay an hour or more, And then what you need to do is you need to go and take like a detox bath or a foot bath. And she'll tell you the little recipe. But Leanne is her name. She is amazing. And also, if you say that you are referred by Michelle and Catherine from Integrative Healthcare Solutions, you can go in there for $20 an hour versus $60 an hour. So she is a huge advocate of what Michelle and I are trying to do with our organizations, of really trying to teach and trying to help people take back control of their lives. So she's being a partner in this for sure. So that's another great avenue. And then another referral piece is we have a licensed social worker, Karen Peters Bowen, and we can share that name if anybody, or her phone number if anyone wants it. So she's a licensed social worker. She does counseling, but what we love about Karen is she also works in the facility. She's all about the energy, the spiritual energy. So she'll incorporate that, some of her sessions based upon what you need. And she takes insurance. So that is huge. So that's kind of in the community side. What can you do at home? So definitely some of my learnings, and I know I kind of jumped my story a little short. One of the things as I got on this path is I was feeling great, but my workplace was extremely stressful because we were all losing our jobs, and I was the manager at the time. And again, I was taking care of my 11 employees, but I wasn't taking care of myself. So 6 months through my journey of this holistic journey that I was on, the pain came back. I thought it was just an abscess. I thought I would just take the antibiotic, and it wasn't. And my doctor came back and he said, all of that inflammation you had before, you still have. You now have new inflammation. Your appendix are impacted. He said, you either need to be on this medication or you need surgery. And I will tell you, I was thrown for a complete loop. I knew I was on the right path, but the issue with this path of managing your energy, managing your spirituality, having this balance within your body, mind, spirit, it takes work and it takes time. So it's not going to go away overnight, but I can tell you long term, if you educate yourself, if you practice, and you take care of yourself every single day and you work at this, things are going to change for the long term. So I ended up, because I didn't have much time, I was sick. I had surgery. So in 2018, I had a foot of my small intestine removed, an inch of my large intestine removed, my appendix, and there was a mass the size of the surgeon's fist. And he told me there was no drug that was ever going to get through that. And it was a long recovery process. But I am now, I think, 6 years out. And since 2018, I've been on 0 medications. I continue to practice every single thing that Michelle's going to talk about, that I've weaved into our lives and the things we're doing with our nonprofit. So this illness didn't come out of nowhere. I manifested it really very slowly over time. And in a way, I love that because I now know why it happened. It's not coincidence. So now I can take control. Now I do work on my physical, my mental, my emotional, my spiritual being. So some of the things that I do at home is, number one, anytime I start to sense and see that I'm getting amped up, stressed out, ticked off, right? Which is a little, my threshold's a little lower because of what I've went through. But when it starts, I call it hit the pause button. Anytime that you hit the pause button, you can do a couple things. One, and you can do this at work. If you look into what's called the Heart Math Institute, they do a little session, even 2 minutes, where 2-minute meditation, you can Google it, go on YouTube, and there's tons of research about their work. You can do a 2-minute meditation with your heart because, we have been designed beautifully. We have our heart and our breath. And those two tools are free. They're here. And when you breathe into your heart and close your eyes and really just slowly breathe and visualize your heart and just set your timer for 2 minutes and slowly do that for 2 minutes, you will instantly just calm right down. And when you are calmer, that's when you can have a better conversation with that person you might be at work with, that, or even your manager, might be at home, right? We can think more clearly when we're not all up here with our energy. So, I always say, insert the pause, take a time out, take a step back, go for a walk, right? If you're at work, just say, I just need like 2 minutes, take a walk around the building, go outside if you can, get the sunlight, get the energy, feel it, close your eyes. Simple, simple things. But in some of these, you might say, that's not going to work, right? There's a lot of things that I've tried that I, back in the day, was like, doesn't make sense. I did them anyways because I was sick, because I was faced in colostomy bag. And what I observed was, little by little, time over time, all of those things that were, it just came down, right? That person, here's another technique. Send love. Send love. If you're struggling with someone, coworker at home, and I know this might really sound a little crazy, send love in your mind, because love is energy. It's energy, and you're impacting your body, your energy body, and it's gonna take things way down. So those are just few of the things that we can do. Jeff, did you have a question?
Yeah, I thank you so far. I'm really dialed into what you're saying. I want to also know we're halfway through it at 12:30, so I know Michelle
Yeah.
wants to speak.
Yep.
Now I want to give the chance for people to ask questions if they have any. But gosh, some of the things you're saying that I've learned. But I have some questions. But the gut health thing to me is something that I think is really super important. And I think we've recognized that's one thing I've noticed that's really made it over the bridge from a holistic healing into the mainstream, which is understanding the importance of the gut. I don't think everything's made it over that bridge. And I think there's always a struggle between that kind of traditional medicine approach and some of the things that you guys are advocating for, like the adoption of those things as being kind of mainstream. We're getting better. It always seems so slow to me, like for people to really kind of embrace it, and I don't always know why, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Like, why is it such a slow embracement? But I think the one thing that has been embraced is the understanding that the gut matters, because I think everybody can relate to being constipated,
Mhm.
and how that feels. I remember, like, yeah, always putting milk and sweetener in my coffee for years, and accepting the fact that I would drink the coffee on the way to work, get to work, go to the men's room, get sick, and then start my day. Like, like I thought, like, oh, that's what happens. That's, and it never occurred to me, like, oh, I'm lactose intolerant, or like 85% of normal adults are. The sweetener is just doing a job on my gut biome. I had to learn about it, but I love the gut piece. I think that's one people can think about in terms of foods that aren't settling right, dairy, sweeteners, um, having a regular. I know that on your program, I know programs that I've taken, they analyze. Um, people don't want to talk about it, but what comes out of you, they look closely at the quality of that as a
Yeah.
determinant of your health, which I think is really interesting. And I love the thing you said about I'm fine. I can relate to that as a man as well, which is just looking at people that, hey, are you okay? I'm fine. I'm fine. Um, and how men and women probably say I'm fine for different reasons, but equally destructive, you know, like I'm fine because I don't think anybody wants to hear what I have to say. Um, as a man, talking about my emotions, but why do you think why do you think employers, what are the obstacles for employers embracing some of these strategies? And why do you think it's still such a slow adoption on a kind of a more cultural level?
Um, it's Michelle and I think would definitely agree. It's a slow adoption, but I will say it is growing. I think part of the challenge is, as employers, we're so used to just, really relying on evidence-based, evidence-based, evidence-based. But I think what we do have to really kind of face is that, I was on the top evidence-based medication and it didn't work and it caused side effects to my liver. So I think we put so much emphasis into it needs to be this, but the reality is these evidence-based, right? They're great. They can be helpful. They're also not the cure-all end-all. And I come from pharma. So the reality is none of those medications, they're helping with some symptoms, hopefully not adding side effects, but they're not addressing the emotional, the spiritual. They're not addressing the stuff Michelle's going to go into, gut health and mind and all of that stuff that you started, the food and all that. Today is just really meant to cover a couple topics, but honestly, there's so much that could be spoken about and so many tips and tricks. But I think it's growing. I think organizations are starting to see it's not working. If it was working, we would not have the outcomes that we have today in mental health and substance use. And, Michelle, I'll ask you, why do you think, what's your thoughts on Jeff's comments?
I mean, I think I agree that it is being adopted. If you think about mental health in the workplace, which I'm sure you've done a lot of stuff on this, Jeff, that's still not even talked about enough, right? We still look at the stigma. We're trying to encourage employers to give employees the freedom to come forward, to be able to say things aren't feeling right for me, but there is the stigma and it's very difficult for people to do that. I think what I encourage people to do is also, as coworkers, be cognizant of your coworkers. When somebody shows up late a lot or they're missing an assignment, don't just pass it off as maybe they're lazy or they're just not doing their job. I would love to see in the workplace people be more interactive with each other and feel a freedom or a sense of it being okay to say, hey, are you okay? What's going on with you? And not being judgmental and just being there to listen, because I think we hide behind it and we don't want to. People have this sense that if they say something, they might make it worse. They don't. I think people need to be there for other people. Let them feel like they can come to you if they're having struggles. And I do think it's happening more in the workplace, but we're not putting together mental health with, if I could just jump into my food aspect, we always think of our diets as something that creates obesity or diabetes or, some other physical illness. But the fact is we have a lot of science-based evidence that a lot of everything we eat affects the mind. Anything, when you look at the vagus nerve that runs from your mouth down into your colon, what goes in and goes out, this is a connection that's constantly talking to each other. And I think, when you put your sugar and your creamer in your coffee in the morning, you're not thinking, you might think, oh, gee, will this put a little bit of weight on me? But you're not thinking, is this going to affect my brain and my thoughts? Is this going to give me brain fog? Is this going to give me fatigue? And then when we have fatigue and we have brain fog, which comes from inflammation, all right, inflammation for what we're putting in our body, we're never going to perform at the level we want to perform. And therefore, we now put ourselves in a state of stress. We put ourselves in depression, anxiety, because we're not performing. Right? It's a vicious cycle. So what I try to teach people is, yes, we talk about mindfulness. Yes, we talk about breath work. I can't tell you how many clients I beg to do breath work. I say, do 4-7-8. Just do 4-7-8. And I don't know how many people on here do 4-7-8, but it's literally taking in a breath for 4 seconds, holding it for 7, releasing it for 8. If we did that 3 to 4 times at our desk in the course of a day, we would absolutely transform our whole body's energy. But we don't. We don't want to take that time to stop and do those things.
But what are your thoughts on tapping? I mean, that's something that I've used successfully at my desk to manage stresses. What are your thoughts on tapping? For those who don't know what tapping is, Kyle and Annabelle, you're here with us today. It's tapping specific parts where there are nerve sensing, you have to get a little training. You can go to YouTube and find out, but it's just doing certain spots which will bring down your anxiety level, at least for me, and kind of get your mind a little bit more softened. But
I think tapping is really important. And I actually have done it myself because sometimes I will get into a state where my breathing, the problem with tapping is people don't want to do it at their desk. I've said that to clients. They're like, I'm not going to sit there and go like this in front of everybody doing this thing.
I do close the doors.
Yeah, right. But when you do breath work, people can't even see you doing it.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, you can literally you're just slowing down. You're trying to get into that, you know, you have your sympathetic nervous system, which is going to be where it's racing, or you get the parasympathetic. We want to just get into rest and restore at some point in the course of the day, instead of what Catherine was saying, it's a constant state of the flooding of cortisol, which is, you know, destroying our bodies on so many levels. I think the thing that I love people to take away with from, you know, I say this all the time, and, you know, it's in 600, it was said, let food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And we've come so far away from that. And I don't understand how we got to where we are. But people don't have to make drastic changes. They need to make some small changes in their diets. When we go into the workplace, we see that there's, you know, a lot of sugars and a lot of carbs, and not that they're bad, they're just bad in an abundance. And if we could just teach ourselves to do what I call the 80-20, Catherine and I both learned this, more fruits and vegetables and and a smaller amount of the not so good food, and stay away from processed food. Processed food creates such inflammation, which we don't think that our brains have a ton of veins in them, right? And they can get clogged just like they can in your heart and anywhere else in the body. So you're getting that inflammation in the brain, which is going to start to create stress, anxiety, depression. Again, all of the same mental illnesses that we're talking about can come from the gut and brain connection. What you put in there is going to affect up here, no matter how you slice it. But one of the things that I think I wish for people in the workplace is that, you know, there's a million things we could talk about mental health and how we can do things. And it is the breathing. It's also trying to, I say, get outside, put your feet on the ground, get your feet in the grass, connect with earth, connect with nature somehow, even if it's for 5 minutes. I find myself having to do that all the time. I just got to get outside, get in nature, breathe, and then come back to my desk. But it's also realizing if we can get mindful and we can think about what's affecting our thoughts right now. What is it that I'm looking at? Is this assignment, this deadline? And really, at the end of the day, what does that affect? How does that affect my life? Or are we making it larger than it really is? You know, and can we step away from it? I get that we have to make money and we have to, you know, be successful in our jobs, but how is that stress relating to our home life? How is it relating to my health right now? And I wish people could just, as Catherine says, take a pause and really look at what's happening with them and say, is this really something that I should allow to affect me emotionally, physically, and spiritually? Because it does. It will do that. I mean, I guess, I mean, I could go into the whole food thing, but
you're making me think about the realization that almost every stress point at work, like an assignment comes in, or all of a sudden I'm anxious or something goes on. It always seems when I trace it back, it's always going back to some sort of a wound.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Right. For all of us.
Mm-hmm.
If I can identify that wound, I'm able to unpack it pretty quickly and understand, okay, this is what this is about. You know, and if I can set that aside,
Right.
then I'm able to kind of go at the assignment with a little bit more of a clear mind, because I'm not bringing all that pain into the assignment. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I think that's work, right? That's something that you've worked on.
Yeah,
You've
for sure.
definitely worked on that. And I think people don't take the time to stop and pause and say, could this be me reacting in a way that was from something else? Is this really the reaction I need to have right here, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, you know, this comes from something that I was wounded by in my past, some small trauma or what have you. And now I'm kind of shifting it to apply it to what's happening to me right now.
Yeah, but that's why I think this is an important piece to talk about, which is when I'm out speaking like you guys, I try to talk about my wounds, because if people don't have that awareness that it is, or that anxiety at work is attached to a wound, then they're never going to get through it.
That's right. That's right.
And then I also too, it's, how often are we using our managers, right? Say we're working on something and we're just getting all this work and we're sitting at our desk saying, I don't know why I'm doing this. This doesn't even make sense. I don't even see it, right? Are we just doing the work as a robot because we think that's what we need to do? And then it's causing all the stress and we're talking to ourselves and the whole thing? Or no, it's about proactive communication. Are we reaching out to our manager and say, hey, I'm in the middle of trying to do this assignment or this task. Either I'm struggling or, hey, can I ask you a question? I've done that numerous times. And I found that if we talk to our managers more, and I say, I don't really, to be honest, I don't know why this is important. So either two things are going to happen. Either they're going to help me to better learn and understand why this thing they want me to do, which is time consuming and driving me crazy and adding to my stress, why it is important. And once I know the why, it will make that process a little easier. Or sometimes I've brought it up. My manager's like, we've sat here, we've chatted, and they were like, you know what? It's actually not a priority. And I think that's part of, Jeff, you asked questions earlier, like, why doesn't some of this making its way in the workplace as much, right? I think there's just so much work, right? There's so many fires, there's so many priorities. And I think as leaders and managers, we have to make sure that employee and employer well-being is on the list as something that we're working on. And if we're not, what can we get rid of? Right. So I just think talking to your manager.
It's a recognition that, the workplace is full of people. I know it sounds such an obvious thing to say, but these people are complicated beings pulling in a life of, wounds and trauma that they are not left at home. They are playing out in the office. I know I'm more successful with my supervisor when I have the ability to be vulnerable with her about what I'm struggling with. But at the same time, when I am able to be vulnerable, and I'm able to, but when I'm not able to be vulnerable, it's because there's another part of me saying, shut up. By being vulnerable, you're appearing weak and incompetent to her.
Mhm.
So I'm always wrestling with those feelings, which again have to be talked about, which is what you guys are doing, and I'm trying to do, and other people are doing, so the workplace becomes more humane.
Mhm, mhm. And it has to start at the top.
Yeah,
It
it
has to
does.
start at the top, and that you have to have a policy in place that says it is truly an open door. If you are struggling, you can come to me. But if it's not going to the boss, again, one of the things I love to encourage is people talking to each other. Talk to another fellow employee, talk to somebody, say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this. What do you think about it? A lot of times when we just get it out and we can talk it out, um, I think we have a better way of processing what's happening and not holding it all in, because then as we all know, we make it way bigger than it is when we hold it in and we keep chewing on it and chewing on it. And then we create this larger and larger story within our heads until it just puts us into a really bad state, physically and emotionally.
Yeah,
So I think
the funny thing is, when I've talked to colleagues about maybe something I'm struggling with, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a colleague sharing something I'm struggling with that they didn't say back to me, I struggle with that too.
right.
Never,
Exactly.
never have they ever
Exactly.
said, oh, or someone said to me, are you okay? No, I'm in my head right now. I got this assignment. I feel like a complete loser. I don't know how to do it. I felt that way yesterday. So it's a good reminder that every one of us is just trying to do the best we can.
Absolutely.
We just need to be open about it. It doesn't, that's important.
That's right. And one of the things I would say to somebody if they're sitting there feeling a tremendous amount of stress too is just kind of take that moment, do some breathing, and then scan your body a little bit and kind of say, where's this tension coming from?
Mm.
And really try to recognize it. Am I feeling pain? Am I feeling stress in my neck? Am I feeling really try to get connected to yourself without judgment and just say, where is this coming from inside my body? And can I focus on that and try to release some of the pressure there, which you can mentally. If you get yourself in a quiet space and you can just breathe for a minute and really think about where is this, because physically you can feel it. It's not just up here. You physically can feel it in your body, and you need to be able to get to yourself, scan the body, and just connect to it physically and emotionally to try to release some of that pressure. I know I cripple myself all the time with emotions. Catherine can attest to that. So, no matter how much you practice it, it can still happen to us.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
and I think that's the thing, right?
constantly practice.
constantly,
How do you,
because a thing is coming
how
up.
do you guys want to work with employers? I mean, if the employer, you know, what do you look, what's an ideal working relationship for you guys in your practice right now?
I think, Catherine, if it's okay, I think when working with an employer, as I think, I teach mental health, and identifying mental health in the workplace. And it's really, again, where I say it starts at the top, I want to educate them on what mental health looks like. It comes in all shapes and sizes, and there is not this one thing that everyone expects is mental health. And when people sometimes think about mental health, they think of really severe illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar, when it's not. We all live with some form of mental health. I believe it's starting from the top and getting the management team to be able to recognize it and have an open door policy that people can come in and express their anxieties. Because what is it costing, every state in absentees or late or, not being able to complete their tasks during the day because they don't have anyone to go to. They need to feel safe. We have to create a safe working environment where these people can feel safe to go to their boss and get some form of support.
I was reading a statistic yesterday, like 1 in 5 employees last year in this very large national survey thought about leaving their job because of mental health reasons.
Right.
And the other statistic that I thought really blew me away was that the relationship between an employee and their direct supervisor has more of a profound impact on their mental well-being than that person's relationship with their spouse or therapist.
That's exactly right.
So you think about that. Oh, it makes sense. 8 hours at work with your supervisor who may or may not be a good fit for you and may not be a nice person, to say it more bluntly. But if that relationship is struggling, wow, you're going to go home with that. And we've all had bad bosses that can really, or bosses that don't understand you. I read that's a nicer way of saying it.
Right.
Don't know how to manage you, but
Right.
that's important. I want to
And
just open the door a little bit for Lori or Kyle or Annabelle or Leah, if they had any questions, being mindful of it. 10 minutes before we close, and so anything that comes up for you guys that you're thinking about, you can stay silent. But I just want to open the door for you. Go ahead, Lori, or whoever.
Sorry, I had to leave for a little while before.
That's fine.
No, I think I'll turn my video on. Oh no, there it is. I think mental health is very pertinent in the workplace now. It's the forefront to everything. If people struggle with mental health issues, it affects their job performance, it affects their home life. But like you said, ladies, having an excellent relationship with your supervisor does really matter. You spend more time at work than you do really at home during the week, especially.
Yeah. And then those bad relationships that you have with your superior ends up coming into your home life.
Yes, it spills over, right?
Yeah. And if we could nip it at work, I think home lives could also, that's when we end up falling into whether we're using substances to kind of calm that when we get home. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. We know the marriage between substance use disorder and mental health because we don't have an outlet to kind of release a lot of that when you're taking it from work and then bringing it home.
Yes.
Yeah. I was reading the other day, substance use occurs when your ability to cope with the pain exceeds your ability. Yeah, something like that. Your ability to, you don't have the ability to deal with the pain. That's what it is.
That's right. That's
Which
right.
as a person in recovery from addiction, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I've struggled or relapsed, it had to do with just, I'm in some situation that I don't have the tools for.
Right, exactly. And, I think, Jeff, that like I have a son who has struggled with substance use for 13 years. And my inability to cope properly with that creates a real sickness for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not abusing the substances, but I've abused myself something terrible mentally. So it's such a vicious cycle. And again, I think for me, when I work with a client, and especially if we work with employers, they have to view their employees from a different lens. It's a new lens today that you've got to look at your team. We cannot keep blinders on and pretend we don't see what's happening and punish for bad behaviors when those bad behaviors could have a litany of things behind them. And once it starts there, and I think it can trickle. And like you said, I encourage people, go to a coworker, go to somebody, say something. And I also encourage coworkers to not be afraid to call out somebody and say, hey, you seem like you've been a little off lately. Is there something you want to talk about? Can we go for coffee? Can we just chit chat? And people will be shocked at that response, because that's all they really need is someone to say, I see you. I see that you're struggling. I got you.
But
And
you're right about that message needs to come from the top.
it does.
Because once they see management and leadership making those same types of gestures towards people, like, hey, are you okay? Then that gives them permission. Oh, I guess that's okay around here.
Right.
But if everything's very kind of buttoned up, then you're gonna follow that pathway. So
Absolutely.
you're right about getting leadership on board. And at Recovery Friendly Workplace, what we're doing, we require that there's one leadership that's tagged to the program, if you will, as a cheerleader.
Yeah, and I think every employer should have some course in mental health. They should have some course that they've taken, or the leaders have taken, being able to recognize those signs and not prejudge why these things are happening with their employees. Again, that's looking at it from a different lens, and I think that's what we need to do.
Well, go ahead.
I would just say one last thing. If you are serving food for your employees, really, as leaders, think about what you're serving to your employees, right? Don't just serve up a whole tray of brownies and cookies, even though that's what we all think we like and it tastes good for the moment. That's not helping, and in any single way. So how do we bring in whole food, real food, maybe one small tray of a cookie?
Every Wednesday, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but every Wednesday they bring in like a whole 2 boxes of pastries, which is a very nice thing to do, but nothing that I can touch without me falling asleep at my desk 2 hours later.
It's a crazy cultural thing in offices.
Yeah.
Anytime you walk into office, you see that spread of pastries or donuts and cookies, and God forbid somebody brought in a fruit salad.
Well, if you are here with us today, Lori, Annabelle, Kyle, thanks for coming. For those of you who will be listening to this recording later on, I hope you enjoyed this conversation about managing stress and burnout with employees in companies. If you like what Catherine and Michelle had to say, reach out to them, work with them. We are trying to get more of these strategies into employers. The bottom line is healthcare costs are a significant, if not the most fiscally difficult part of managing a business. Controlling those costs is critical, and if you have healthy employees, you're going to have lower healthcare costs, you're going to have lower injuries, you're going to have more productive employees. So that's what we're all kind of striving for. So thank you for joining us today on Recovery Friendly Workplace, June 2024's webinar, Lunch and Learn, Managing Stress and Employees. Thank you, Catherine and Michelle, for your insightful comments, and I hope people reach out to you if they need to speak with you. And if you want to become a Recovery Friendly Workplace, we'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay cool.
Thanks. Stay cool, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.